Khalid, thank you so much for joining CNBC. Really exciting news coming out of Saudi Arabia today. Walk us through how this process gets you closer to IPO.
So it's good to be back with you, Hadley. You remember back 3 years ago, we announced our intention to go public. This is where Vision 2030 kicked off, and where we had to revisit our plans to enable the objective of the Saudi capital market and the targets actually for it. So we had gone through a huge transformation, whether these on the regulatory framework, on the inclusion of Saudi Arabia on the emerging market indices, listing of Aramco, launching of derivatives, and to our internal setups, where we started at that time where we announced the intention to float. We were one company, and as you heard today, we are 5 companies. I think we are in a much better shape, a much better story for IPO for investors. And we are at the beginning of a new era for the group to grow and compete regionally and internationally.
It's the Saudi Tadawul, one of the best performing markets in the world at this point. Getting an idea of the broader picture from you at this point, is this the right time in your view to do this IPO? Are we talking a timeline in a few months, the end of the year?
I believe so. The setup that we have, the market momentum, our financial performance, all of these indicators is just give us the comfort to say this is the right time to float the company and to be among developed exchanges who are listed also on their platforms.
So by December, we'll have an IPO of the Tadawul.
Of course.
When you think about this with regards to the company itself, the entity, how much of a percentage are we talking about that you're going to be willing to put out there?
As you know, and all investors know, we are in a very early stage of that decision and the structure of the IPO. The regulatory framework set 30% as a minimum float. However, we have seen in the last 2 years, CMA approving lower percentage than the 30%. Depends on the size, depends on the condition of the market, and depends on the demand. And where are you offering these? The IPO itself, whether it's local plus international. So we are at this stage of determining all of these activities and the structure of the offering. And here where we gonna announce the size of the IPO, the restrictions of the offering, all of these details.
Give us a sense of what's been happening in your view with the market over the last 6 to 12 months. When I speak to traders, they say, it seems as if we're in the midst of a market frenzy, as we say, one of the best performing markets in the world, the Tadawul. And a lot of folks say this looks as if it's going to be a repeat of 2006. What's driving this in your view?
Well, driving this many things. I think we are in a special situation globally of COVID-19. We've seen a lot of investors going more and more into stock markets. It's easy to liquidate. It's easy also to go specifically in a growing industries. So as far as performance, I would have to have a different view that this is another spike of stock exchanges. Today, exchanges or equity markets in particular are a good liquid platform for investors to watch slowly the impact of COVID-19 on each sector independently. I personally anticipate people or sectors, leaders, companies to introduce a more innovative way to manage the crisis in a much better way. So demand, in particularly in our market, retail investors, if you look at IPOs, and the last 6 months of IPOs, the demand on IPOs was tremendous. Coverage were or coverages were also very high, and we have, I would say, usually it's not an equal or parallel line demand where you see less IPOs, more demand by investors, or vice versa. I think we are at a stage of the Saudi market where we have both competing with each other. High demand by investors on IPOs and a very, very healthy, and I would claim historical pipeline of IPOs in the Saudi market that will take place this year.
How do you see the impact of oil prices on this IPO?
On Tadawul's IPO? Tadawul is not linked directly to the oil prices. It's a stock exchange by the end of the day.
Well, Saudi Aramco is listed on the exchange.
And you can see how Saudi Aramco is stable over the course of the last 12 months. Hadley, it's important on the position of the company, in my opinion. And I would say, from the perspective of Tadawul, I think Tadawul ticks all the boxes as far as governance, as far as growth, IPO story, financial performance. And if I look at the last 5 years, every single year, we have maintained growth over growth over growth, whether these financials, our offering, our governance, our setups, our regulations. So I don't see any direct correlation between oil prices and Tadawul's IPO. However, of course, oil prices are important for the Saudi economy.
When you look at the makeup of the stocks that are trading on the Tadawul, not so much tech focused, we don't have any FANGs, also green energy, not really present. How is this going to change the makeup, in your view, of the companies that you're going to be trading?
Well, if I look at ourselves in the last, I'll take a snapshot of us 5 years ago. Are we the same? No. A lot of regulatory frameworks has taken place, whether this governance, investor relation, access, etc. Similar that comes, for example, to the ESG frameworks. So we'll continue to enhance our setups to look at it from both ways. Help the issuers to comply with diversification and international investors and local institutions' demand when it comes, for example, to ESGs, as well as, in some occasions, putting the regulatory framework to force certain practices. So if I take in particular ESGs, and what are we doing around this area? In few weeks, we will be issuing our ESG guidelines for Saudi corporates. With that, we'll start to work to educate our issuers about the importance of ESG in the eyes of the investors, followed by creating an index for ESGs for Saudi corporates, which gonna enhance the way issuers look at investors in the same way investors look at issuers. So I don't think that we would stop. We will continue to diversify our sectors. We'll continue to diversify our investors, as well as making sure that our issuers are always up to date on investors' demand.
Do you see another spike in COVID having any impact on your plans for an IPO?
All of this is on the horizons. We can't. I hope we can say yes or no, but unfortunately we can't. However, the comfort level I would say here is that, in particular, Tadawul have reacted well to COVID-19 impact. The market is growing. The market is operating without any impact. The economy is recovering, whether this is locally or globally. So people are getting used to alternative ways to deal with the pandemic. So in my personal view, I don't see any bigger impact than what happens last year if there is a new wave of COVID-19, in my opinion.
Khalid, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining CNBC.
Thank you very much for having me.